Hello and welcome to Run Testers. My name's Nick and we've got something a little bit different on the channel today in that we're not going to be testing a brand new shoe out, we're going to be testing a very old shoe out, which is the Nike Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. So tonight I am running a 10k race with my club, Orion Harriers, in the midweek road running league in Hertfordshire. I'm going to St Albans for that, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to bring the Vaporfly 4% out of retirement, give it a go and see how it compares to some of the newer shoes. Now obviously this is not the very original Vaporfly, I've got the non-Flyknit version here as well, but this is very beaten up and I didn't really fancy using that tonight. I've actually got quite a fresh version of the Flyknit shoe because I had a couple of pairs of them and this one was kept in pretty good condition. I never actually had the ice blue colorway of the real original Vaporfly 4%, but I think this is a pretty good approximation. You've got the same midsole setup and all that, so hoping to see how it feels tonight. And obviously we've tested quite a lot of new carbon shoes this year and in the past, 6 years or so since this originally came out, so really be interesting to see how much carbon shoes have moved on since this and how it feels tonight. And on that note, let's have a quick look at how the technology has changed from this shoe to the modern shoes. So one thing that hasn't really changed with the original Vaporfly 4% compared to newer versions is that Nike is still using its ZoomX foam, the PEBA-based foam that really launched super foams and created probably what is the most important feature of these modern super shoes, which is these bouncy foams. Carbon plates obviously in there as well, that's also very important, and those two things have been pretty consistent across Nike's super shoe range. They might have tweaked the formulation of ZoomX a little bit behind the scenes, it's not really something I would know for sure, but you still have that bouncy foam here in the Vaporfly 4%, so a familiar feeling even if you're using modern shoes. What is quite different though is the stack setup. So the Vaporfly 4% was obviously created before any stack limits existed, but no one was really creating 40mm racing shoes then, and Nike shied away from doing that, and it's still a high stack shoe, and it was certainly outlandish at the time when we first tested it. It felt very high compared to racing flats, but I think it's somewhere around 35mm at the heel. The other thing that's different, it's got a very high drop. It's got 11mm drop to the forefoot, which is in theory around 24mm. So if you compare that to the Vaporfly 3, the latest version of the shoe, this stack height gets up to that 40mm limit set by World Athletics. It's got an 8mm drop, which came in with the Vaporfly Next Percent and the Vaporfly stuck with since then. And you also got a lot more padding under the forefoot as a result, because you've got a higher stack all round, lower drop. So you've got like 32mm of foam under the forefoot of the Vaporfly 3, whereas it's only 24mm with the Vaporfly 4%. So that's a big difference with the shoe. Otherwise, lots of things are quite similar. So it's still a pretty lightweight shoe. It's very similar in weight to the Vaporfly 3, actually, just over 200 grams in my UK size. Obviously, you have a Flyknit upper, whereas the original shoe had this mesh. This is a nice upper. I also think hugs the foot quite nicely. A lot of people really liked it. It's been in and out with Nike's racing shoes, whether they use that, and a very stripped back outsole. Actually, the outsoles on super shoes, I'd say, have definitely improved since the Vaporfly 4%. I think durability started to become a bit more of a concern with them, and they started to put slightly more resilient outsoles on them, with the exception of the Vaporfly 3, which obviously has a very flimsy outsole that we've talked about in our reviews. But that was one area that did get chewed up a lot with the old Vaporflies, was that underneath section of the shoe. As you can see there, lots of exposed foam. So yeah, I'm excited to give this a go though, because carbon shoes have changed a lot, but the Vaporfly 4% was an amazing shoe. I imagine it's still going to be a pretty amazing shoe. I think I used it, was it last year or something? I did a Vaporfly Through the Ages video. Used it for some track reps there, but also to be a full race. Also, I'm not in exactly flying shape right now. I obviously did the London Marathon, and that was quite recent, so I'm in very good shape in theory because I had all that marathon training in my legs, but since then I've just been recovering. Haven't done too much speed work yet, so it will be a bit of a tester for my legs tonight, but very excited to see how the Vaporfly 4% feels. One of the favourite shoes of all time, the shoes that changed everything. And it's still a shoe that people say to me is their favourite version of the shoe. They don't like any of the newer versions. It'd be interesting to see how much of that is just nostalgia for those first few breakthroughs when you're really running really well because you suddenly had a soft, bouncy rocket strapped to your feet instead of a hard racing flat. So it's day after the race, which was a pretty enjoyable one. It went probably a little bit better than expected. I ran something like 33:10, I think, for maybe just shy of 10k, around 10k on a mixed terrain course. So we had kind of the first K on grass and a K on gravel and a bit more grass, and then lovely 7k section, I'd say, on a bike path in country road, so really flat, really nice running, very smooth, and then a final k back onto gravel and a nice 400-meter grass finish. I was running pretty much by myself in second for most of the race. Thought I might get caught at the end, but in the end was just able to kick a bit and hold on for second place overall, and really did enjoy running in the Nike Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. It's interesting because this is a pretty old shoe, but it felt pretty fresh and it felt fantastic. I still felt really fast, really propulsive, all the stuff you expect from a carbon super shoe. And differences are there for sure. You definitely got a lot more ground contact with this shoe. Not ground contact, but ground feel. Like under the forefoot, you can really feel the ground, but not in an uncomfortable way. Actually interesting, there are some shoes at that much higher stack, so something like the Saucony Endorphin Elite, I always get a lot of forefoot discomfort in that shoe from the way I snap through, and that's obviously got a much higher stack than the Vaporfly 4%. It's got a carbon plate, it's got a super foam in the midsole as well, but even after 10k, my feet are pretty beaten up in that shoe, and that wasn't the case with the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit, and obviously it's a shoe that I've used to marathon distance in the past without that, and you think about it now, you go like, oh, if it's only got like 24 millimeters underneath the forefoot with a carbon plate, that's going to be too harsh to run to marathon distance, even though at the time this was like the most comfortable shoe ever made for the marathon to be a proper racing shoe. So yeah, didn't have any kind of discomfort there. It just felt grounded, nimble, fast, high turnover. It was pretty nimble as well on the kind of grass sections and gravel sections. Although that's not great for the outsole. It's probably taken a bit of damage there, even on those short gravel sections. And that's something that you have to risk with super shoes these days as well. Although some of them have slightly better coverage there and a bit more firmer outsoles to increase durability. But in terms of actual performance, like it really is there. Like when the Vaporfly 4% came out, the non-Flyknit version. The midsole on that is the same as on this shoe, though. It was before the Rio Olympics, obviously very controversially, and that's 8 years ago now, and it's still a really fantastic midsole. It still holds up really well. It's it's really bouncy, it's propulsive, it's comfortable, it's everything you expect from a super shoe, and that was the big leap with this whole generation of shoes, I think. So brands have sought to improve it since, and they have improved it. I think the very best super shoes available now are a bit better. Something like the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris is similar in style to this shoe, but I do think it's improved it. You've got that higher stack, you've got an even lighter weight, you've got a bouncy feeling, and it is a fantastic shoe. I would take it over the Vaporfly 4%, but it's certainly not the leap to that shoe that it was from whatever we were racing in before the Vaporfly 4%. So for me, that would have been like the Adidas Boston, which was good shoe with boost foam in the midsole, pretty comfortable, but still quite stripped back, so it didn't get too heavy. And the stack height was probably around 30 millimeters at the heel, something like that. And that's just so different to what this is. And I remember the first time I used the other Vaporfly I have there, the 4%, and for a workout, and I'd done the same workout in the Boston the week before, and it just felt like ridiculous, the difference, like in terms of heart rate and just general perception of effort. It really felt, obviously there was all the hype around it as well, but it really felt like that, and it's been established very clearly since then it isn't just hype. And that leap has just continued with basically smaller leaps. Like we're definitely not getting that leap again, I think, with the regulations as they are, and even if they weren't as they are, because I don't really think the 50mm shoes that we've seen since then have really been an improvement on the 40mm shoes that much. I don't think you just keep adding more stack and it gets better, maybe some kind of combination of plates or something like that, but we are now in a very different era, I think, of kind of incremental improvement or changes in style of super shoe. And we talked about it a bit on the podcast, it becomes more about finding the one that really suits you and works for you best. Whereas Vaporfly was a leap forward. It was a shoe that worked pretty much for everyone better than what was there beforehand. Like, some people will say they preferred racing flats, and I'm sure they did prefer racing flats. Maybe they did feel better. Maybe this didn't work for you as well as for others, but it was, a shoe that I think pretty much most people could step into if they didn't mind the instability and stuff like that, and would find it better for a full marathon in particular because it was so comfortable and lightweight and propulsive. And now we're kind of into, like I say, it's the era of refinement. We're not getting this leap forward again. And this shoe does stand up very well against modern racing shoes. That's the thing. Like, it's got all those ingredients in there. It still works really well. That high drop is quite nice, actually, turning over your feet towards the end of a race when you're really tired. Like, there's a section kind of from 7k to 9k where it was up a slight hill on the bike path and I was slowing down, but you can keep turning over. And you do miss a bit of the punch there of the slightly bigger shoes you have here, like the bouncier shoes, and the fact that bouncy shoes have managed to get that bounce into a lighter shoe with a higher stack and stuff. That is an improvement on what you have here. It does feel a bit more explosive to run in, but it really isn't lacking a lot, this shoe, and it was great fun to run in again. And there's not too much more to say here. I thought it would just be interesting to use these shoes and see how different they are to modern super shoes, and the answer isn't that much different. Like, you definitely have a lot more ground feel under the forefoot. That is a very different feeling. The amount of drop you have here and the relatively low stack is very different to pretty much every super shoe now. No one else is doing a super shoe like this. They've all lowered that drop. They've all got more forefoot stack and to varying extents, but you still got a fantastic foam, you still got carbon plate, and it still works really, really well. And that was the moment that has changed and brought in this generation of other shoes. And if I was going to go and run in a race, choosing between these two, I'd pick this one. It's the same weight, you've got more stack, it feels more comfortable, feels more bouncy, still got a bad outsole, but the difference here is not the difference between this and whatever we had beforehand. And it'll be interesting to see if we can get another leap forward under the current regulations. Brands are seeking to do different things, like cutting out the back of the heel so they can raise a stack in the midfoot like Mizuno and things like that, trying to get different materials in, like the AirPods and the Alphafly, or just trying to nail this formula by making the phones very lightweight and keep bringing the weight down. Something like the Adios Pro Evo 1 or the Asics Metaspeed Paris series, where they're putting all these super foams and plates into shoes that are just really light, which we all know helps in races as well and feels really good. So interesting run out in it. Really enjoyed the event. props to St Albans Riders for putting on a good event. Enjoyed it all round, and Ryan Harris had a very big turnout, so that's very pleasing. And it was fun to pull this shoe out of retirement and give it another go and have all these thoughts and think all these thoughts about carbon shoes through the years. But yeah, amazing shoe, certainly, for its time and even kind of now. So that was a little throwback vid for the Vaporfly 4% Flying It. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Did you have that shoe? Love that shoe? Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.